Alright guys, the next step that I'm going to be doing on this little nugget, this is Suu Kyi, our Asian Skin Tones baby. I'm going to be doing her nail beds, and so I zoomed in the camera so that I can get as closely as I can to the toe tips on this little baby. I am using the color cream. This is the lightest colored cream that I can find from Bountiful Baby before it goes straight white. I use the lid as a kind of a palette just because I don't need this color except for on nail tips. And then I have kind of a brick color. It's not the bright color that I've used on her all so far. It's just kind of a burgundy brick red that I get from mixing the red color mixed with the vein or the dioxazine purple number 4, the light purple. It makes this kind of a light brick color. So I'm going to drop a couple of drops of thinner into my lid just so I can soften up this purpley cream color and get myself a palette to work with. Let's see if I can get this to zoom in better. I guess I'm getting too close. My camera is starting to have mental problems. Okay, so I'm going to take a tiny paintbrush that I've trimmed down to be pretty much nothing, and I'm going to put a tiny bit of a moon right on the back of each of the biggest toenail on the big toes. And then I'm going to soften this up and just make sure it doesn't come down any farther than I want it to in this moon shape. And you can kind of see it there, kind of a whitish color. You don't want it too bright or it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. So easy does it on your thickness on this. Alright, so that's a toe, that's the first part. Onto her tiny fingernails, it's the same step. I'm going to do a tiny moon on each of the fingernails. Make sure that that doesn't blend down into the rest of the nail bed where it doesn't want to, or shouldn't be. You can kind of see that developing the moon base. The tinier your nails, the harder this is going to be. So this is kind of fun to do on the big toddlers because they have such big nails to do it on. But it's important to do as best you can on all these little nails too, just so that they're as realistic. And not all babies have these. I know I have them. You can see on my nasty, dirty fingernails that I have them. They're only horrible because I did some hair dye and it won't come off. So I look like I'm a dirty old bat, but it's just hair dye. So I have to live with it until it comes off all by itself. But there are babies that don't have them and there are babies that do. So I like this step. I just think it adds more depth and more realism. People who don't know about reborns don't expect all these tiny details to be there because they've never seen a doll so real before. So these little details are what kind of blows them away and makes them excited to see more. Okay, so I'm going to do the last big toe on the other foot, and then we'll go into the red color. You kind of want to make this kind of a really small semicircle, half circle type of a thing. You don't want it to come down too far into the nail bed. It needs to stay right up at the top. Alright, so we're done with the white cream color. So now I'm going to come in And on this particular baby, I'm actually going to use this brick color, but I'm only going to pull it from the lid so I don't have to have such a wet palette. So I'm taking some paint from the lid, or from the jar, and putting it on the lid to thicken it up a little bit. Alright, so with this step, I'm actually going to outline the white that I just put on and make kind of like little groovy stripes coming down towards the nail. And then in my blending brush, I'm going to gently pull it and fill that and blend it into the nail bed, leaving the thickest color right next to the base of the moon. Let's see if I can get this in even further, but I don't know if it will let me. Now my moon on this toenail is not even, so I'm going to even up this outline right here just to make it so it's smooth on both sides and the color is equally across. Now for all my tiny toes, I'm not going to put the moons in, I'm just going to paint the toenail with the plum color. Blend them in. You don't want the paint to come off the toenail onto the nail or onto the tip of the toe, you just kind of leave it there. Okay, so that's one little foot. And I'll come in with nail tips last. So here's a hand. I start with the thumb. Gosh, I hope this is clear. Look how pretty that is. All right. As you can see, I'm kind of using my pinky to help hold my working hand steady so that when I'm doing these tiny details, I don't have to try to balance it, because I'm not maybe that good at balancing and making lines straight without having a sturdy hand to do it with. Whenever your paint runs out, grab more from your jar and wet your lid again. Alright, so one little hand. Nail beds are done. I'll come back in with nail tips in a minute. Next foot. Okay, 2 little feet done, 1 more hand. Okay, so this step is done. Now I'm going to come back to the nail tips. I'm going to reach and grab the nail tip brush. Alright, so this pathetic little brush is custom made from a big fat brush. So it originally started out to be really long and really wide and kind of went down to a point. But I cropped it down to like, I don't know, 10, 12 hairs and cut it to be a blunt tip so that I could have a very sharp edge to do my nail beds with. And I want them to be tiny, absolutely tiny, because if you get them too thick and gunky, then it looks really dreadful. Okay, so back to my cream color. This is my nail tip color, as well as my cuticle cutter color. I'm going to loosen up the paint. I just put a couple of drops in there. I'm going to take my paintbrush and just kind of gently swab the edges with it so that I can get a little bit of paint in the tip of my brush. Now this is a very delicate step. You need to balance your hand, and instead of painting like top and pulling it and trying to go like this, where you're pulling it one way or the other, I'm going to use the brush and I'm going to pull it towards me in a sideways fashion, just at the very edge of the brush, or at the very edge of the nail bed, just itty bitty. I don't even know if you can see that. I don't know. Can you see that? You don't want the nail tips to look huge and thick, or it won't look real at all. Just a tiny little tip. I think I just wiped this one off with my thumb. This one's just a little bit too bright, so I'm actually going to tap it and get it off it there and moisten up my paint a little more so it's not so bright. There you go. Much more realistic color. Okay, the last one right at the end. Okay, one little hand done with nails and nail beds and nail tips. She's good to go. Alright, so now I'm going to move on to her feet. Set this aside to dry. Gently drag it across the front of the toe. And I keep going until my paint stops showing up, so I don't have too much paint, especially on these tiny toes. Just tiny little nubs. Alright, one little foot. Let's see how much paint's left, but I think it's about time to dip again. Now be careful when you're doing the ones on the palm of the hand, because your brush, you don't want to accidentally touch the palm with the back of your brush. This one doesn't come on. I think I must have wiped it off a little bit right there. Alright, so 2 little hands, just tiny nail tips, nice nail beds. Tips of my fingers, you can see that they're going into a soft pink, but they don't look so pink that they look like they've been dipped in blood or bludgeoned to death. And that's what we're after. We want it to look real. Alright, the last little foot. I'm going to start with the biggest toenail. Normally I go from the back and start towards me, but the big toe, because I just dipped, I want to make sure that the most paint comes off on the big toe and not these little tiny toes. Okay. One little foot done. Very cute. Cute little Suu Kyi. Alright, so I'm going to come on with another video next, and I'm going to do some last final facial details. So I'm going to pause or stop this one and start a new video just for you guys to see the next steps.